Bedier.
And this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. This is your host, Samar Jarrah. My co-host, Ahmed, is out of town and he is supposed to join me next week because we do have a fund drive and we're going to be raising tons and tons of money to keep freedom of speech and to keep such wonderful shows that you listen to on True Talk. Today I'm going to be I have two segments actually. I'm going to be talking to Professor Mohammed Al-Masri. We've had him a few weeks ago, I think, Ahmed and I, to talk about the so-called Trump peace plan. He has written rebuttal, or he had written an interesting essay about it. And then I'm going to be talking about TikTok, the app, because, again, interesting developments happening there. Let's listen to this music by a British singer. And we're going to be right back.
How many times do I have to try to tell you that I'm sorry for the things I've done? But when I start to try to tell you, that's when you have to tell me, hey, this kind of trouble's only just begun. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would love to play more of this song, but Dr. Mohammed Al-Masri is a very busy, sought-after commentator. So good to have you, Dr. Mohammed, on True Talk. Okay, I think I need to invite Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Dr. Mohammed?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I was just saying that you are sought after these days since, of course, the announcement on Monday of the Trump 20-point plan for peace. And as I just mentioned, you are a professor of media studies and write extensively about U.S.-Arab relations. The title of what Dr. Mohammed published is Trump's 20-point plan for peace is a call for Palestinian surrender. From reading your piece, obviously you are not very happy with it. What are the main reasons, Dr. Al-Masri?
Well, there are several. Let me start with maybe a couple of the really obvious ones. First of all, one of the main conditions, not just for Hamas, but for the Palestinians all along, has been a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and this plan actually doesn't call for that. There are three separate withdrawals that the Israeli military is supposed to undertake, but even after the third withdrawal, they still remain inside of Gaza on roughly 20 to 25% of the Gaza Strip, and so this is why you had the Times of Israel publishing the map very proudly, and you had Benjamin Netanyahu taking to social media yesterday. He posted a video where he was basically bragging about that specific point. There are many other things, though, many other problems. There's also the problem of governance. Not only do the Palestinians not have the right to self-governance, but they really have almost no say in the governance of Gaza under this plan. There would be two governing bodies. There would be something called the ISF, which is an International Stabilization Force. That would be different countries involved, but Israel would actually play a primary role in controlling that ISF. And then you have something that Trump is calling the Board of Peace, where he wants to he would be the head of the Board of Peace, and he would be assisted by Tony Blair. So, I mean, it almost reads like a bad joke if you're looking at this from the Palestinian or an Arab perspective, to have Tony Blair, who is a very strong friend of Israel and the Israeli state, and also has been accused of committing atrocity crimes in Iraq. And then obviously Trump is, as Netanyahu himself says, is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. So there are problems with the governing structure as well. And then there are other issues. The Palestinians will be asked not only to, I'll close on this point and then we can get into other points, but this is important. The Palestinians are asked to give up all of their arms and destroy all of their tunnels. And just so people are aware of what that means that not only would the Palestinians be incapable of launching an offensive attack against Israel, but they would be incapable of defending themselves against any Israeli aggression. And to shut down the tunnels, it's kind of a death sentence for the Palestinians, because one of the things that's not mentioned in this plan is the blockade that Israel has been imposing on Gaza since 2006. It's a suffocating blockade that has necessitated this extensive tunnel network and tunnel economy. The person who's written most cogently about the tunnel economy is Sarah Roy of Harvard University, Professor Sarah Roy. She's the foremost expert on the economy of Gaza. And she says that by 2009, 90% of all of the goods that went into Gaza or that were going into Gaza were entering Gaza through the tunnels. We're talking about food, clothing, medicine, you name it. So to shut down and destroy all of the tunnels while not addressing the blockade, in addition to some of the other problems that I mentioned and also problems that I didn't mention, I would say that this is a catastrophic deal for the Palestinians. That's why I said this is basically a surrender, not a surrender for Hamas. I'm talking about a surrender of the Palestinian cause more broadly.
When President Trump started talking about his peace plan, he premised it with that I give Bibi full support, that if Hamas doesn't agree, he can do whatever he wants and he will have all the backing. This was really, my heart sank because, okay, this is like if you are going to negotiate some sort of a peace agreement or settlement between two spouses who want to divorce, you go back and forth. You say, okay, these are my 20 points. What do you think? They say, okay, 72 hours, Hamas has to deliver all the hostages. Okay, is there a time frame for Israel to do anything and to release the prisoners? And they're going to release prisoners that are from Gaza, who every day Israel kidnaps Palestinians and imprisons them. So how do they expect Hamas to say yes to 20 points without reading them or talking about them or maybe making them 22 points? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, so I mean, Look, I mean, it was presented as an ultimatum and a warning and a threat to Hamas. That's very clear. And by the way, Palestinians were not consulted at all. Arabs were consulted, other Arab entities, Arab countries, and Muslim countries. But the evidence is now showing that what they signed off on is something different from what Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump presented at the White House after their meeting the other day. The Middle East Eye published a really good report yesterday about some of the anger in these Arab and Muslim capitals, in particular in Egypt and Qatar and Turkey, because this was not what they agreed on. It was an ultimatum.
Sorry, Doctor, to interrupt, because this is really very important, and we do have listeners from all over the world, including the Arab world. Like when Trump was saying good things about the Emir of Qatar, the Emir of Saudi Arabia, of the King of Saudi Arabia, of President Sisi, he really double-crossed them, or somebody went into the room like they do at sometimes with congressional laws and changed them. Like, what happened? How could he deceive them?
We don't have the full details yet. They'll come out eventually. But what we think happened, what we think happened based on the evidence that we have before us right now is that the Arab and Muslim leaders sat with Donald Trump on the sidelines of the UN, and they came to an agreement. That's why he said so forcefully and, in a kind of celebratory way that, we had gotten broad agreement from all these Arab and Muslim leaders. But then what happened, and this has been reported, is that Benjamin Netanyahu sat down with Donald Trump, and also, there was Jared Kushner, Ron Dermer, and Steve Witkoff. They were all present, and it was a very long meeting. Some reports say it was almost a full day. And it was at that meeting, and that was the last meeting. So that's important to know. And we know this for sure, that the Arab-Muslim meeting with Trump was the first meeting, but the Netanyahu meeting with Trump was the last meeting. And at that meeting, that's where all of these edits were implemented. So that's what we're reasonably certain that's what happened. So Hamas is in a very difficult spot. This is what I wrote in my article. I mean, on the one hand, if they reject it, they've already received the warning from Trump and Netanyahu. And I don't just think it's a matter of going back to the genocide. I think it would be worse, believe it or not, because I think Israel would use this as a chance to punish the entire population. That's part of their basic military doctrine, the Dahiya doctrine that they have been enforcing in Gaza and also in Lebanon and elsewhere. So I think it would be worse. On the other hand, if they accept it, there's the problem that they'd be, surrendering the Palestinian cause. And also, they're not really authorized and to address some of these issues. They're not necessarily authorized to decide for Palestinians on a permanent Israeli occupation of Gaza. They can decide within Hamas's domain. They can decide on the Israeli captives and how many that they're going to give back, and what the time structure is, and those kinds of things. How many Palestinian prisoners to accept in return. That's all within their mandate, I guess you could say. But to make decisions on behalf of all of the Palestinians, major decisions that will affect their future, then they're not necessarily authorized to do that. And that's why the point that you made about time is critical. How much time is needed for Hamas to go back to all these different Palestinian factions and get their feedback, right? It would take some time, certainly more than the 3 or 4 days that Trump is allotting them. And one last thing on time, I thought it was really interesting and telling in the document. If you read the 20-point plan, the things that Hamas are expected to do, they have to do within very tight time frames. So, for instance, the captives have to be released within 72 hours. When it comes to Israel, however, they are not held to time limits. Very flexible, vague language is used. And also in terms of humanitarian aid, that they use vague language. It's very broad. It gives Israel a lot of leeway. So when it talks about construction material, for instance, it says that Israel will allow construction material in as necessary. Those are the words that are used. So it will be very easy for Israel to say, well, we don't think this is necessary, or at least it's not necessary right now. And they would be able to say that they're abiding by the letter of the law or the letter of the agreement. So these are just some of the problems. I mean, if we went through all of the problems in this 20-point plan, we would be here for a long time.
Yes, Professor, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there is also a Palestinian Authority, there is a Palestinian diaspora, there are 5-6 resistance groups actually in Gaza, and some of them have some of the hostages. But I want to mention something that really is disturbing to know that that our President Trump will be head of this peace group. What are these thousands of years of wars and thousands of years? Like, can you just mention that? Like, he doesn't know anything about history of the region, because thousands of years ago there was no statehood, no Islam, no Muslims. I don't know if you have the time just to...
I mean, I don't even know I wouldn't even know where to start with that. But I mean, it saddens me to say that the President of the United States is profoundly ignorant. He's I would say he's near illiterate when it comes to, history and the Middle East. My best guess is that he certainly has not read anything, but my best guess is that one of his advisors, made a comment to him that they've been fighting for thousands of years, and you're gonna solve the problems in one with one agreement. So this is we've come to get used to. We've gotten used to Trump being very kind of braggadocious, and he likes to take credit for things, going back to his first term as well.
But the reason I mentioned that is because part of the 20-point plan is kind of a re-education of the Palestinian Authority, re-education of the Palestinians in Gaza. So maybe it should include educating him.
Well, and maybe re-educating the Israeli society, 64% of whom believe there is a modern day Amalek, which is the group in the Bible that is to be completely annihilated by the Israelites, including their infants and their suckling infants. So more than 60% of Israeli Jews said that they are not bothered at all by reports of famine in Gaza. 82% of Israeli Jews supported the mass expulsion of all of the Palestinians. More than 60% of Israeli Jews said there are no innocent. They agreed with the statement, there are no innocent people in Gaza. There are serious problems in Israeli society. And so if we are going to say that Palestinians need some education, we should certainly say that the Israelis need some education as well. That's not part of the plan. It was a very Israeli-centric plan. I should say it is a very Israeli-centric plan. It focuses on, educating the Palestinians, I should say de-radicalizing. That's the word that is used twice in the 20 points, de-radicalizing the Palestinians. And when it talks about Palestinian reform, and I have to close here in about 2 minutes, but when it talks about Palestinian authority reform, it's referring back to Trump's so-called deal of the century from 2020. And just so people understand, what Palestinian authority reform means is not the kind of reforms that the Palestinians want, right? For the Palestinian Authority to be less oppressive, to be less subordinate to Israel, to be less corrupt, to have free and fair democratic elections. These are the things that the Palestinians want. The reforms that are being talked about there are reforms that would favor Israel. They are reforms that would make the Palestinian Authority even more subservient to Israel. So that's also, I think, one of the major problems with this plan.
I want to thank you, Dr. Mohammed Al-Masri, for being on True Talk. Really appreciating the fact that you are so busy these days. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So this was Dr. Mohammed Al-Masri. I really would have loved to spend more time with him, but he is sought after because of the developments in the region. And as you have been listening, the Arab nations and Turkey and Pakistan were duped into believing that this is exactly what they will be signing on. But obviously, it was changed the last minute. I think there was a footage taken of Jared Kushner and Witikoff leaving the hotel where Netanyahu was staying. But really, me as an Arab with the heritage and all the books that I have read and the knowledge I have, to have somebody tell me that we need to re-educate ourselves or we've been fighting for thousands of years is hilarious. It's sad that there is a guy that is responsible for solving a problem and ending genocide and starvation and would actually be talking about himself so much. Anyways, I'm going to play this song one more time because we're going to go to Eli Clifton and talk about TikTok. This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM.
Don't you ever learn to keep your big mouth shut? That's why it hurts so bad to hear the words that keep on falling from your mouth. Falling from your mouth. Falling from your mouth. Tell me why. Viciously unkind, but I can still read what you're thinking.
And welcome back to True Talk. This is your host, Samar Jarrah, and I have with me Eli Clifton. Good morning, and good to have you on the show again, or good afternoon, Eli.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I just need to I want to mention that you are with the Quincy Institute and you are an investigative reporter and you always write very, very interesting things, actually. And this time about TikTok and a particular email that was kind of released or found. But before we do that, for our listeners who do not know what is TikTok, could you talk about that app and significance of it, and why is it part of this Arab-Israeli debate and U.S.-Israel debate?
Sure. So TikTok is a social media platform that really focuses on short-form video content. So sort of short video clips that people can make on their own, on their phone, or on their computer. And it has become a place where certainly a lot of youth are, and people who are politically active, and content that is calling attention to the genocide in Gaza, and U.S. support for Israel has been pretty prevalent on this platform. Now, another element of this platform that has brought scrutiny onto it, aside from its sort of the political leanings of the people who might be on it, is the fact that a significant portion of its ownership is with a company called ByteDance, which has roots in China. Now, that has been an ongoing source of concern from both the Biden administration and now the Trump administration, that this Chinese ownership of this really popular social media platform inside the United States could be some means through which people in China could seek to impose some sort of foreign influence through tweaks of the algorithm, et cetera, over American audiences to sort of shape American public thinking. Now, to be very clear, there's no evidence that has occurred. It's more of a speculative concern. And just as a side note, I should say, I'm actually a little sympathetic to some of these arguments that, for instance, user data for Americans are being held outside of U.S. jurisdictions because there are laws about how user data is to be used within the U.S. legal system, but it doesn't really matter if that data is being stored outside of the United States. So I think there were workable solutions here to address some of these problems, such as simply requiring social media platforms that operate within the United States to store data from U.S. users inside the United States. That could have been an easy fix, but instead it turned into this whole a scandal of sorts and political debate about whether the ownership it could be forced to sell it, and that is what has occurred. Where it seems like we're very close to a deal for about $14 billion, where the ownership of TikTok, again, and I emphasize this, with fears about foreign influence driving the sale, excuse me, is being sold to a group of U.S. investors. Now, the largest buyer in that deal is the technology company Oracle. That is famous. Its founder, Larry Ellison, is one of the now he's the second richest person in the world. And its CEO, until a couple of weeks ago, is a woman named Safra Katz. She's now the executive vice chairman of the board. She's an Israeli American. And when we started to dig into the things that Larry Ellison and Safra Katz have said, it seems like it raises the same concerns about foreign influence of the platform over this platform, and what are the intentions of these tech executives. Now, in a cache of emails that were hacked and acquired from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak's email inbox, Safra Katz shows up in it then as the CEO of Oracle in 2015, where she says, and I quote, "We have all been horrified by the growth of the BDS movement in college campuses and have concluded that we have to fight this battle before the kids even get to college. We believe that we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture. That means getting the message to the American people in a way they can consume it." Now, that seems like a pretty concerning message for what will be the head of the ownership group that is going to be taking over this massive social media platform, especially, and again, I keep emphasizing this, when the reason for forcing this sale was a concern about foreign influence over the platform.
So is social media, or let's say apps like TikTok, and to a lesser degree maybe Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, is really shifting public opinion among the young people in America, or there is a grassroots, genuine shift, and then these young people went to TikTok to express themselves?
I mean, my speculation is that it's more the latter than the former. I think that there's obviously a generational divide to a degree about Israel's war in Gaza. Consistently, younger groups within the United States, those 30 and under, have been more critical of Israel's behavior. However, the polling that you look at consistently shows that while maybe some older groups are slightly more pro-Israel than younger groups, and a group people who associate with the Republican Party are maybe a little more pro-Israel than those that are in the Democratic Party, the trends across every single group, whether you split it by political affiliation or age, I think are pretty much the same, which is that there is declining public support for Israel. And that's where I say, I think we could use that as evidence to suggest that it is not these social media platforms that are driving this shift, since older groups in the United States are probably less on these platforms than younger people, but you're seeing a steady decline across every single group. I think it's just most visible as something you can look at and see, obviously, on these social media platforms like TikTok, where younger people tend to be more active, and where their ways that they express themselves are in sort of mediums you can more easily engage with, like short form video content. But no, I think this is simply a reflection of a shift that is going on in this country across every single group.
You mentioned that the CEO of Oracle is going to be one of the largest investors. Wasn't he on some conference, I think international conference, is trying to sell the idea that that governments should have everybody's livelihood on database? Like he was afraid that China might do that, but he wants to sell his Oracle programs to make other countries spy on their own citizens. I mean,
Well, I think something that you see across a lot of companies, not all, but across a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, has been this pivot towards playing up the supposed threat from China, as certainly played out here with the impending sale of TikTok, but using it as a means to further their own agendas. Now, maybe that means expansive contracts with Department of Homeland Security, or with the DoD, or with intelligence services that could be used potentially to spy on Americans. It could be used for making weapons that will supposedly be used in a future clash with China, or in the case of simply a consumer social media platform that in theory has no government involvement at all. They are using it to force a sale, which they in turn will obviously benefit from because they think this TikTok social media platform is a good business. But also, as it turns out, and quite possibly, they could use it to advance their own political agendas, be that crushing criticism of Israel or anything else that comes up for them.
When it comes to crushing, are you saying that they are capable of censoring, for instance, if one mentions genocide or mentions certain words? I'm not very familiar with TikTok the way I am with Instagram, because the Palestinians keep saying, we are shadow banned on Twitter, on Instagram. But so it is doable?
Absolutely. I mean, all of these platforms, in many ways, for potentially good reasons, are able to say, hey, certain types of content, certain phrases, certain imagery is something we don't want on our platform. But that 100% can extend into something which wouldn't explicitly violate any sort of norms around what should be on the platforms, but instead could be used to shape the political content.
Let me just remind our listeners, we're talking to Eli Clifton, who is Senior Advisor at the Quincy Institute and Investigative Journalist at Large at Responsible Statecraft. And he reports on money in politics and U.S. foreign policy. But isn't this a way, can they hide the fact that they are censoring Americans? Because young people are amazing at knowing what is going on. And these people, they think sometimes that they're talking publicly to each other and not other people are listening in and know what they're planning. Like, for instance, I'm going to shift maybe to Netanyahu when he was in the U.S. For the UN meeting. He met with influencers and he was telling them, and the ADL before him was saying, we are losing the U.S. public. Wouldn't this backfire when they see that there is an attempt to silence Americans and young Americans because they are against genocide and against killing babies and starving them?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that comes across. And Netanyahu's comments to these influencers was a really good example of that. He knew he was being recorded, unlike that email that I reported on with Safra Katz, which in all fairness was supposed to be private. This was comments that he certainly knew were public. He said some wild things. He said the most important purchase going on right now is TikTok. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, X. We have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. We have to fight the fight to give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends. Now, that sounds a lot like he's explicitly saying that we're going to try to influence these social media platforms. And I think that at one level, yes, it's incredibly tone deaf. I think you're right. It will backfire because, well, he said it out loud and people can see what that is. And it's going to offend people inherently because this is, the leader of a foreign country coming to the United States saying how he's going to influence or hopes to influence two of the most popular social media platforms that young people participate in. That's not going to go over well, regardless of who the leader is. But I think the other piece here that is really important is, as I mentioned earlier, sort of this steady decline across various groups in their support for Israel. And I think that people are horrified by what they're seeing in Gaza. It really, really, really is upsetting. And the truth is that Israel and its supporters very often are still framing this as, well, we just need to do the marketing better. We need to, do better hasbara, as it's called, We need to, in this case, maybe influence some social media platforms. And if we succeed at that, and if we just do those things better, then we will somehow win this information war.
How much?
And I think that that's a fundamental that's just wrong. It's not about the quality of your message when the photos and images that do make their way out of Gaza horrify people.
How much are they paying? How much is Israel spending? I mean, we know about AIPAC and how much they try to influence U.S. foreign policy vis-a-vis the Congress and the reps, and how much they pay them. But when it comes to such attempts to buy influencers, I think that's the other, your organization wrote about it. I think Nick did that. But if you can elaborate a little bit about the idea of an influencer, and who is the influencer, and what is expected of an influencer.
So, and I should say that, very often when we talk about what are the amount of money that goes into the Israel lobby to influence people, it's very hard to measure because, for instance, an individual donor who's in the United States, who's an American or U.S.-Israeli dual citizen, can give political money and send their own message, and it doesn't necessarily show up as being, somehow about Israel. But I think this is a reflection of how badly Israel is losing the public opinion and political war. They are now engaging more directly with, influencers and media groups, and actually registering under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is something they've usually not had to do so frequently because of the fact they have various domestic factors in the United States here who undertake the work for them, putting up the money, taking the initiative, so it's not a foreign principal. But in invoices that my colleague Nick Cleveland Stout uncovered, he detailed a $900,000 invoice between June to November, which was to support a cohort of 14 to 18 influencers to create various forms of content on social media platforms that was supportive of Israel. He broke it down, and it kind of worked out to somewhere between $6,000 to $7,000 per social media post that these people were undertaking. They are now essentially paying influencers to produce social media content. It's not something that's happening organically, or the degree that it is occurring organically is being deemed insufficient by Israel and its foreign ministry.
So these so-called 14 or 18 influencers who have content, are they capable of changing the minds and hearts of young people, or sometimes I feel it reminds me of ads, for instance, like major food companies like McDonald's. Everybody knows McDonald's, and it's at every corner, but they do spend $100 million on advertising. So is it if they are not there, they think that they should be there, even if this $900,000 is not going to change anybody's mind? I don't understand it. I found it very weird.
Look, I think that Israel is fundamentally right now, and its supporters are struggling to maintain anything resembling the level of support that they have received for many decades now. And I think you're seeing them for lack of a better term, sort of lashing out. But they're trying a variety of strategies. This is probably one of the more innocuous ones, to be quite honest. Every country, we have the First Amendment in this country, and that extends to, we have some laws around it, but foreign principals and foreign governments can hire people to disseminate their talking points or propaganda. And I'm not advocating that should be outlawed by any stretch. I think that's just a fundamental thing we do in this country, and I think it's mostly for the better that we have that sort of free speech and debate. I do like that we have the Foreign Agent Registration Act that does dictate that at least it has to be disclosed. Now, there are other things going on, though, which I think are more sinister and are frankly a lot more threatening to to our First Amendment rights and our civil liberties. And that has to do with that while certainly there is plenty being invested in just trying to put out messages that Israel thinks are good, they also are working very, very hard to outlaw speech that they instance is harmful to them. And that extends to... Can
you elaborate, what speech? What, for instance, criticizing the state of Israel and labeling you and I as anti-Semitic?
Exactly. So a good example would be, the efforts to deport green card holders who are who are critical of the U.S.-Israel relationship. There is the effort to condition federal funds to universities on their willingness to crack down on criticism of Israel on their campuses. And I think that these are far more dangerous because this is no longer Israel and its allies, who are now sort of a minority of politically active Americans, trying to win the argument about the U.S.-Israel relationship by making counterpoints to the critics or to advocating for their views. They are trying to effectively shut down the criticisms themselves to either make it high consequences for making these for people being politically engaged on this topic and critical of Israel, or creating genuine legal consequences for them. And so to turn back then to the social media platforms, and you asked, can they shut down this type of speech on the platforms? Given the track record that Israel has undertaken in trying to impose these restrictions on, again, very often on U.S. permanent residents or U.S. citizens who are simply exercising their own First Amendment right to criticize the behavior of a country 6,000 miles away, I think it's absolutely something that we should be prepared for, is that there will be an effort to simply shut down this speech on these social media platforms, specifically TikTok.
Okay, I'm not sure if you followed this, but it happened last night or yesterday on Twitter, where the FBI, Patel said, we are disengaging from ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and we are not going to cooperate with them. And then Elon Musk jumping on it, and then of course later on adding Netflix on it. What is going on? Or I'm not sure if you're following the story. I didn't have a chance to follow it, but ADL is one of the organizations that also created some sort of a canary mission files on active American-born Palestinians, for instance, who are supportive of Palestine, and they would put their pictures. I know of a particular girl who went to college, finished college, and then her name is plastered all over New York, so she won't find the job after graduating. Are you following anything of this ADL, FBI, Musk involvement?
Yeah, so it seems a little complicated right now. I've been trying to keep up with it, but it does seem like there's some mixed messages, whether this is about the government shutdown and appropriations, or whether this is part of more of a consistent right-wing backlash against the ADL. I know that certainly the right wing has been very upset about criticism from the ADL of the Christian Identity Movement and Turning Point USA, which is interesting because that is a small fraction of the ADL's overall activities. Mm-hmm. The ADL's activities at this point are heavily focused on trying to criticize and shut down debate that is critical again of Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship. Now, I know that Elon Musk in the past has had his own falling outs with the ADL. That was a while back. I haven't seen. It seemed like he had largely stayed quiet about that more recently. But it seems as if whether or not this is part of a broader trend or not, it seems as if, again, that there had been this focus on ADL's criticism of Christian Identity Movement and Turning Point USA, which may have given them the excuse they needed to try to sever the federal involvement with the FBI. Now, I would say overall, I'm very concerned by a lot of the activities undertaken by the ADL. I think that they try to actively conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, and I think doing so is actually extremely dangerous and works against their supposed mission of trying to combat actual anti-Semitism. So I don't have a huge problem with it if the federal government wants to distance themselves from the ADL at this point in time. But it seems as if the reasons that are being given for doing so, or that are being speculated at, don't have so much to do with Israel or with anti-Semitism so much as, or linking those two together so much as the criticism the ADL has at times leveled against organizations and movements and individuals on the far right.
Finally, Eli, as somebody who was not born in the U.S. but lived in about 6 different Arab countries, freedom of speech and the fact that we can have this debate and have this discussion is very valuable for me. And I see it being eroded, especially at a time when funding for NPR and such stations is being threatened. Are you alarmed at what is happening to the freedom of speech? I know you mentioned it, but because we are a radio, luckily funded by listeners, but again, we as a station, we used to get money from the government, and same other stations, same NPR. Isn't this dangerous? I mean, can't the larger public see what is going on?
Absolutely. It's deeply, deeply concerning. And I do think that defending Israel's increasingly genocidal behavior in Gaza has become a real wedge issue that figures who want to constrain free speech in this country have weaponized. And I am deeply concerned because I think that these trends that we've been observing now for a couple of years, actually, of eroding American support for Israel, are being met by increasingly strong-arm tactics, because that's what's necessary if one is going to maintain the status quo of carte blanche U.S. support for Israel. And as that support is not going to stop eroding, I think it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. And I think that's going to require even more strong-arm tactics, even more infringements on our civil liberties in order to contain that opposition and try to make it disappear. So as long as we continue on this pathway of, and I haven't seen any deviation from it, either in the Biden or the Trump administration, of essentially giving Israel whatever they want and giving them political cover and military support to do what they want in Gaza, the cost of being able to do that may increasingly become our own free speech and our own civil liberties. And that is, frankly, a war coming home to us.
Yeah, I wanted to end here, but I got a DM from Twitter because people are listening online. And the question is from an Arab. Is it easy to create an alternative TikTok, like by young tech people, or they really need huge amounts of money? Do you know?
I do not know. I know there are other social media platforms, some of which are very similar to TikTok. There is actually one in China, which people were going to go over to when TikTok was briefly shut down. Yeah. So obviously it's called Red Note. But I think that's, and I think that's a good place for us to end, actually, is that there is this side of sad quality that Americans who are, have some legitimate concerns about, for instance, TikTok or any other social media platform, but TikTok in particular, because they were keeping user data outside the United States, somehow weaponizing that data or imposing some foreign influence on Americans. Unfortunately, this has sort of pushed us into this corner where people are talking about using, Red Note, a Chinese social media company, because they're concerned about the restrictions that will be imposed on them on TikTok. And you see these American comedians who just went to Saudi Arabia, and a lot of them were criticized for doing so because of, human rights conditions in Saudi Arabia. But apparently a running joke that a lot of them were repeating in their stand-up acts was about how they had more freedom to talk about what they wanted to in Saudi Arabia versus when they come home to the United States. And that's a pretty sad place that we're at when that's a punchline.
I really want to thank you, Eli, for taking the time and for this wonderful reporting. For our listeners, they can go to responsiblestatecraft.org, I think, or is it .com?
.org.
Responsible Statecraft. Thank you so much, Eli, for being on True Talk. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So that was Eli. It's very interesting conversation. Responsible statecraft is the is the platform or the website that he and other young Americans work on. As you have been listening, our listeners, our freedom of speech is sacred. To me, at least, it is sacred. And I have some emails here. I don't think there is time for phone calls, but let me, if you have any comments, you can go to dj@wmnf.org, dj@wmnf.org. And as I mentioned, my co-host is not in town, but he's going to be here next week to help me raise thousands of dollars for WMNF. What is the... Israel is the most anti-Semitic nation on the planet today, and that's from Fred on WMNF email, dj@wmnf.org. I was planning with Patty to do some music show, because there are so many songs that are created by Westerners and Europeans on Gaza. So let me play this. I keep trying to play this, and then everybody jumps in, Eli and Dr. Muhammad, before the time. Let me try and play the songs. It's beautiful. I love it. Let's listen to some of it.
How many times do I have to try to tell you that I'm sorry for the things I've done? But when I start to try to tell you, that's when you have to tell me, hey, this kind of trouble's only just begun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I tell myself too many times, why don't you ever learn to keep your big mouth shut? That's why it hurts so bad to hear the words that keep on falling from your mouth, falling from your mouth, falling from your mouth. Tell me why. I may be mad, I may be blind, I may be viciously unkind, but I can still read what you're thinking. Oh, and I've heard it said too many times that you'll be better off besides. Why can't you see this boat is sinking? This boat is sinking. This boat is sinking, 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 sinking down now. Let's go down to the water's edge, and we can cast away those doubts. Some things are better left unsaid, but they still turn me inside out. Turn it inside out. Turn it inside out. Tell me why. This is the sound of drones and guns. Watch the people run, run, run. Shoot to kill them just for fun. Bodies falling one by one. Step back while they blow the fuse. Those who win and those who lose. Those who conquer and abuse.
And this is Scottish singer and songwriter and political activist and philanthropist and Linux. And she was singing this a few weeks ago in England, in Britain, to raise funds for the orphans of Gaza. This has been WMNF, and this has been True Talk. Hope to see you next week, inshallah, where we raise lots and lots of funds. And this is WMNF Tampa. The scoop is next.